So we are live right now. Okay. So, hi everyone. Welcome to Digital Marketing Talks. Building a brand from scratch that stands out is not an easy task. There are so many questions that you have to think before you're creating your brand. What should it look like? Will it resonate with my audience or not? And how should it make people feel about it? Whether you have a product or a service based business, or just an idea or an established brand, you need to know about strong brand identity for your business. If you can't define your business in 2 sentences, chances are that you need to work on your brand. So do stick till the end because today my guest will be sharing steps on how to create your brand from scratch. Let's get started. This talk is intended for educational purposes only. My guest today is Zenab Kashif. Hi, Zenab. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, any fun fact or where you're located or anything.
Hello, everyone. My name is Zenab, and I am born and raised in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I currently work as a freelance designer and photographer full-time. And fun fact, oh gosh, I'm named after my great-grandma, and she had spelled her name Z-E-N-A-B, and that's why I spell my name Z-E-N-A-B, which is like it's an odd spelling for Zenab. So that's where that comes from.
Awesome. That's great. So, so we are going to talk about building a brand from scratch. So, what is a brand and why is it important for any business to create one?
Yeah.
What do you think about it?
So the funny thing about the question of like what is a brand, it changes for every purpose. Like a brand for a business is different than a brand is for like an individual person, than a brand is for a corporation. But I think across the board, you can really say that a brand is anything that you create that's customer focused or customer forward. So anything that someone else is seeing that isn't you is part of your brand. And whether that is your language that you use, the visuals you use, the marketing you do, everything you do, that should be part of a cohesive whole, and that cohesive whole is called a brand. And it's important primarily because, like in this day and age, especially with the increased use of technology and social media, brand is really the biggest way you can give yourself exposure on all different platforms and have people understand who you are no matter what platform you're on. And sometimes brands that are super, super successful don't even need technology to be successful. Like Apple's a big, I guess, example of that. Their Apple symbol is so legendary now where sometimes their posters are just blank screen and an Apple symbol in the middle. And because they've done such a solid job with their branding and they're building this kind of identity that now no matter who you are in the world, you know exactly what that Apple means and what that's entailing and what that advertisement's for. And that's a good example of like successful branding.
Exactly. Brand is actually your reputation.
Yep.
And I was amazed. One of the somebody named Marty Neumeier. He used to work at Apple, and he said about the brand a very, very nice thing, that your brand is not what you say it is, but it is what customers are saying about it. Yep. So it is very interesting when you actually think about this phrase that it's not something that you are actually trying to make or create or provide any services to anybody. It is something that people are whatever people are telling about it to other people.
To an extent, like you show people what they see, so you still hold all control over what people see. The brand is what other people see of you, but like you're the one controlling what people see of you. So at the end of the day, it's your decision what you make your brand look like, how you make your brand seem, how people perceive you. So as much as people, I think, assume that you can't control your brand because like other people just like assume, but at the end of the day, like what other people see is because you're putting something out there. So that's why it's difficult to really put a definition on it, because it is something that you are curating, but at the end of the day, if it's only successful if it resonates with people.
Exactly. So what are the steps to create a brand from scratch?
Yeah.
If you can explain them in step-by-step process, so it will be easier.
Yeah. So I'd say there's like in my eyes, there's 5 basic steps to like the branding process. I think before anything, research is the biggest important baseline foundation of any brand. Doing your research and making sure, I think a lot of people jump very quickly and like they know they have a business, they know that they want their logo to look like something and they just do it, but they don't go through that step of doing research and seeing like what's your target audience, who are your competitors, what's in the market that does better than you, that does worse than you, what are competitors' logos look like. All of these competitor analysis, all of that research is a really, really important step to assure that your brand has a good foundation. And then after research is basically strategizing everything. So strategy is probably the second step. And typically what goes into strategy is more like writing down notes and finding inspiration. And that's what I think when you think strategy, I think of Pinterest. I use Pinterest heavily. Like when someone comes to me with the logo project, whether they're in this process or not, I will always sit down with like everything open on Pinterest, just looking at inspiration and seeing like, okay, what's done, and like everything that they told me, how can I take that, find some inspiration for it, and then create a logo. So that strategizing portion, I think a lot of people skip research, go straight into strategy, and then do design. But I think that strategizing portion and taking your time and really looking at things for your inspiration and looking at curating a brand statement and creating like a mantra and creating purpose statements and all of these things that go into, obviously what you create depends on the type of business you are. Like in my case, I'm a photographer and designer. So my thing was, strategizing for me was like, what do my service packages look like? What does my pricing look like? Why would people pick me over another designer? Like, what do I offer that other people don't? And what is all of that content that I'm trying to deliver look like? And I think sitting down and really figuring out all of those key details really help you in the later, so that you don't have to do them later. And then after strategy is really where designers come in, where it's identity. So your brand identity. So that's when your typical, what you think of when you think of brand, you think like logo and symbol and colors.
So that's the step 3. Okay.
Yeah, so do research and then strategy and then identity. So identity is where like you either do it yourself or you hire a professional to help you and take everything that you strategize, everything you've done research about, take all of these notes you have, everything in your head, and make them come to life through identity. And so identity, again, looks different for each person. For a coffee shop, it's packaging, it's a menu, it's all of that. For someone like me, it was my website, it was my logo, it was my colors, it was my social media. So all of those things that are your typical customer-focused things that people see, and people quickly will identify your brand with things that you put your logo on. That's all part of the brand identity system. That's what it's called. Like the whole cohesive whole of like whatever is designed for you is called a brand identity system.
And you know how like brand identity sometimes work is when you look at the logo, or when you look at somebody's mission statement, or their branding, you can really tell that what are they trying to convey to their customers, how actually they are creating a value. If you look at the example of Apple, right? They're a premium brand. If you look at Starbucks, if you take any logo of big brands, especially for Nike, or if you say, let's say, if you take an example of Walmart, right? If their branding, their mission statement, it's totally resonating with what their brand is actually conveying to their customers.
Right. At the end of the day, I think it's hard for people sometimes to understand that obviously it's your branding, it's close to you, but you're not designing it for yourself, you're designing it for other people. And
Exactly.
you have to make it so other people will resonate with it. Obviously, you should be in love with it, and that's obviously a designer's job to make sure that you're also in love with it as well as the customers. But I think it's really hard to separate that like I have to keep my personal preference, at least for me as a designer. A lot of my clients will have a very different preference than I will. And it's really sometimes difficult because I want them to do something else, but then they want to do something else. And so you have to understand that there's so many puzzle pieces that kind of have to fit together to create a really successful brand. And the most successful ones are the ones that really nail like their customer, and they design for the customer. They don't design thinking, because if you think about it, like a lot of these logos are super simple, like Nike, Apple. As designers, we joke about it because it's like it seems like someone just put an icon and that's it. Like it doesn't seem like there's a lot of work that went into that logo, but it resonates with people. It works. And I think that's what we seem to forget a lot of the time, that good design doesn't mean complicated all the time. Good design just means the successful design that has the customer in mind, has the strategy in mind, has the research in mind, has all of those things, those steps that I talked about in mind. Even if it's simple, sometimes that's what you need, like a simple icon that will really get the point across. And sometimes you do want like a complicated icon. It really depends on that's why it's so important to do that research and strategy, because if you get to identity and don't know who you're designing for, then you can easily create something that is disconnected with the audience. So yeah, that's like the identity portion. So anything like content creation wise, all of that would go into identity. And then after that, I'd say like marketing assets and stuff like that, it would be like the fourth step. So digital marketing, that's where digital marketing comes into place. Because I always tell my clients that I'm a designer, I can design everything for you, give it to you, but if you don't know how to use it, then it's useless. And if you don't use it effectively, then it's useless. So I'd say like marketing and making sure that like you're effectively putting yourself out there, putting yourself on social media, making nice social media templates and that are branded, creating business cards, creating a website that's branded, creating things that will resonate with the audience that are consistent. They're not a one and done, and branding is like never a one and done. Like you're consistently adding to it, you're consistently putting yourself out there. And that's, I think the fourth step is really where marketing comes into play, and making sure that you're taking everything you have that you've built in like these three steps and you're putting it out there so that it resonates with people. And that'd be the fourth. So the fifth step I always say is brand management, which is like an ongoing, it never ends. Like it's a consistent step that you're always doing after you brand. And that's where consistently creating new things for your brand is really important. Like if you, like that's how you scale as a business. Like you're not just going to be done after you create a logo. A lot of people think, oh, just a logo is enough. And yeah, sure, for like temporarily, just a logo might be enough. But if you're like a boutique and you just have a logo, eventually you're going to need packaging. Eventually you're just going to need nice tissue paper. And eventually you're going to need business cards. So that, guys, expansion of your brand is called brand management, and making sure that you're consistently managing according to where you are in your business journey. And you're making sure that you have enough to assist you, and you're not like stranded if all you have is a logo and you're growing super exponentially. Then that's where it could get really, really, I guess, nerve-wracking, because you don't have enough assets to keep up with the demand. And so I think brand management isn't just creating new content, it's just making sure that you're using your old content. And you're like, it's like super simple stuff, like does your email signature match your Facebook? Does your Facebook match your Instagram? Does your Instagram match your website? Everything should feel like it's part of a family. And all of that, like consistent, like making sure everything looks cohesive, is part of brand management. And that's the step that a lot of the time you're doing alone as a business owner. You don't not if you don't have a designer on your team, then after they do the identity portion, typically they're going to leave you and you're going to be alone with all of this stuff. So
Mhm.
I think that's a lot of the people that I worked with. I think that's what I emphasize on after we end the project, that it's not over, like, I'm giving you all these assets, but please make sure that, like, you use them. Please make sure that you're using them correctly based on how we've talked about them, and please make sure that everything looks cohesive and you're successfully making sure that your brand's out there. Because there's no point, again, putting in thousands of dollars into a branding and not using it.
Exactly. You have to apply all of your branding across your business, be it you're using a social media channel, or if you're sending an email newsletter, or if you're using a traditional digital marketing methods,
Yeah.
maybe you're just mailing flyers to your customers, or so it has to be consistent across all platforms wherever you're using it.
Yeah.
So we have a question here. Mohammed, thanks for joining. He's asking, what are some resources we can use after this talk to help build a brand?
Yeah. So again, Pinterest. I think Pinterest is great. I think that people really put, like, if you just search up like logo design on Pinterest, there's a world of things that will pop up. Use Instagram, use social media as a resource. Like, look into the hashtags for logo design and marketing and branding, and like just look at how other people do it, because to an extent, everything that's created in the world is inspired by something else. So not like very, very rarely does something get created that's just generated without any inspiration taken into account. So I think people sometimes they're like, oh, I don't want to look at Pinterest because I don't want to copy someone. But you're not necessarily copying someone. You're just looking at what other people do, and you're seeing how you can apply whatever they did successfully to what you do. So I'd say Pinterest is huge. I think social media is a great tool if you use it correctly. Find like the resources. I've been part of a couple Facebook groups for business owners and entrepreneurs, and get involved in Facebook groups that have that conversation consistently happening about, like, how do I brand my business? How do I successfully market my business? Because the more you talk about it, the more you'll understand elements about it.
So, do you have any research tool in mind as well that people can use to do their research for their target audience?
Yeah, I mean, I think that like simple sitting down and like, I think the biggest thing for research, or like one of the biggest things, is competitor analysis, and just sitting down and listing the companies that you can think of that are competition, and then Googling their website, and then seeing like what like how did they approach their branding? What did they take into account with their target audience? How did they look at all their, because a lot of these companies have their branding publicly available. Like, you can go online and search Apple branding, and a lot of their assets will come up, a lot of their research will come up that went in. So just that's simple as that. Just look at big businesses and search branding after that, and you'll get a lot of information, because a lot of these companies are public, like they're like the branding, at least some of the branding is publicly accessible. And I'd say that like podcasts are really big, and I'm not going to be able to tell you exactly on the top of my head right now, but I can link you some podcasts that give you a really good, like, they're good, like, at kind of, there's one specifically that I can think of that's just about logos, and the podcast host interviews people who, like, famous people who design logos, like the Apple person that designed the Apple logo, or like the Verizon person that designed the Verizon logo. And just like, it's really crazy how much thought and effort goes into that Apple logo. Like, it's small, it's very simple, and that's what we think, but once you hear the podcast, once you look, there's also a documentary out there for like logo design. It's really, really insane. And I'm a little nerd about this because I'm a designer, but it's crazy how much you think that it's just a simple icon that they probably created in a day. It's very, 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 very like strategic and like research driven, and like really, really like mechanical how they designed it. So I think Google is your best tool. Just Google. If you like a brand, Google the brand, and then after that, Google branding or logo, and see what pops up.
That's a great resource. So, when we're talking about logo, and nowadays most people especially for small businesses when they have very tighter budget and they can't really go after everything, their website and their branding. So sometimes people are doing these things by themselves. So what do you recommend to any business, be it a small business or medium-sized business or any business, that if they're creating their logo, how should they go after the colors, the how should they pick those colors, that harmony? Because you have to have a specific color or harmony that matches your logo, your content on social media, your website, everything across the board.
Yeah.
So what do you recommend to people who are actually trying to do it by themselves?
Right. So I'd say Canva is like a big tool that people use.
Uh-huh.
I suggest it to a lot of people who are on a budget, who don't have necessarily enough resources, time, or money to really put into getting a designer to help them.
Mm-hmm.
Canva is a great tool. Canva actually has a color generator. If you just search Canva color generator, and it's really
Mm-hmm.
nice. And you can upload an image, and it will show you like the main colors of that image. And there's also this website called Colors with two O's. So
Mm-hmm.
COOLOR.com.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
It's coolers or
yeah,
colors?
coolers. But
Coolers.
it's a color generating machine. Like it just generates color palettes, and if you press the space bar, it generates a new color palette. So I use that
Mm-hmm.
one a lot just because I get stuck all the time. Like I don't know what colors to use.
Exactly.
So I'll just space bar through like a bunch of times through these generated color palettes, and it makes it a little easier to see it when like it's huge and they're next to each other. Because I understand that as a person who might not understand design, it can get overwhelming because you don't know what to do.
Oh my God. I can sit maybe in front of computer for 5 hours and still there is nothing coming out of it
Right.
because I'm changing colors all day
Yeah,
long.
but I will say that
So,
if there's anywhere there's room in the budget, then I say that, and I mean I know this is going to sound biased, but I think that I mean looking at it as also a business owner's perspective, like there's nothing better you can do for yourself than to set a nice foundation for your business by having good branding.
mhm.
Because what's end up going, if you do it yourself, it's fine. It might look great, like it might be perfect, it might be what you need, but someone who understands the elements that go into a brand and like making sure you have all the assets you need, eventually you're going to have to hire someone to help you. It's either now or it's later. That's what I always tell people
Mhm.
who have less of a budget, because I totally understand, but eventually the more you grow, the more you're going to need assets that you can't create by yourself. So at least I think that if like your logo and like your brand's foundation is set up really nice, be it by a designer, by a creative, by anyone who understands all of these elements, then you're pretty much setting yourself up for success, because at least your brand is like, it's never a bad investment to like spend a little bit more and like get a nice logo created, because you'll see it's like all my clients skyrocket after, and it's not just because I think my work's great, it's like my work's fine, but it's because they're set up and they suddenly have all of these assets and they know how to use them, and they get really excited because it's like, oh, now I have social media templates, I'm just going to create social media posts, or now I have a logo, so I'm just going to go create a business card. So I think trust a professional. There's professionals there for a reason, but if you can't, then Canva, that colors generator that I talked about, there's a lot of like online resources for like free like logo generators. Like try them out and see what works for you.
So I got a question from one of my friends. She's asking that how many fonts should I use on my website? Is there a specific number, or can I just use as many fonts as I wish?
Yeah, I'd say minimum. I mean, okay, like it largely depends on the brand. If
Mm-hmm.
your brand is wild and like fun and crazy, then go ahead, go crazy. But if you're trying to be minimalist, if you're trying to be simple, I'd say like maybe assign like one headline font for like your bigger text, maybe one middle font for like your semi bigger text, and then one font for the text. I think the biggest thing is that legibility is the big thing about fonts, like especially when it's a website. Like everything else aside, people are on your website for a mission. Like they're there to see your business, they're there to see your services. If it's too
Mm-hmm.
fluffy, if it's too much, then people won't stay on your website. And I know that's harsh,
Exactly.
but
Mm-hmm.
um, I always tell people it's like lean towards simplicity when it comes to a website, because I think there's a statistic out there that people only spend like 30 seconds on a website, or like even less. And
Mm-hmm.
so the more like simplified you can make it. In fact, the less text you can have, the better. Like, don't write essays on essays on essays. No one's sitting there and reading. Trust me. Like,
Exactly.
no one, very few people are going to sit there and scroll through your website and read all of your text. Simplify it, make it so you only have the things that you absolutely need.
Exactly, and that's where the designers come from, right? If you can't do it by yourself, then hire a
Yeah,
designer,
I mean,
right?
sometimes, like, and I think people assume that they're expensive, but there's a lot of people out there that don't do, like, that are students, that are younger, that are just wanting experience as well. So reach out, and again, these like Facebook groups are a great tool. Like, there's entrepreneurship Facebook groups, there's
Mhm.
marketing Facebook groups, they're a great tool to find other people to help you. Because I mean, some designers are costly, and for good reason, but like, you can find someone to help you just whip up a logo, create some nice fonts, find a color palette for not that much. I think you'd be surprised.
Exactly. So, what role do you think digital marketing plays when you're creating your brand from scratch?
Yeah. Like step four, I'd say. So like,
Mm-hmm.
when everything is, I feel like people jump too quickly into digital marketing.
Mm-hmm.
I think biggest thing that businesses do, I think, prematurely, is like they'll get really excited, create a very fast, create a logo that they didn't put a lot of effort in, and they really just whip up some colors that they think look together and start generating content. And that's great. And if you're on like a time deadline, then sure, that might work for you. But take your time really into like making sure that like every part of your brand is near perfect, because your digital marketing process will be seamless and so much easier if all your assets are perfect, everything that you set up for yourself is like spot on, than if you
Mm-hmm.
just have like, like, didn't put an effort. So I'd say step four is really where it comes into play.
Exactly. Yeah. So, any advice or any um, closing thought for today that you
Yeah.
have?
I mean, if you're here, you probably are looking working on a brand, so good luck. It it's hard. It can be and can be nerve-wracking at sometimes, but at the end of the day, it's your business, it's your brand. So whatever you put your heart into, like, it'll be fine. Like, it'll look great. But look, use the internet to your advantage. I think that the resources we have in this day and age is absolutely amazing compared to what other people had. So don't be shy to like reach out and network also with people, because like a lot of people will be willing to help you, even if like you don't need a logo design, but you need some help on like understanding how, like, just to look at your website and see if like, is this good, then trust me, there's designers, I'm one of them, who'd be willing to help. Like, if it's just a quick question on like, I think that not all the time are other people competition. Like, we're all here to like help and learn from each other. And so I know that's fluffy and like, but you know what I mean? Like, use your network, because a lot of people have like, use people for their strong suits. Like, some people are really good at design. You might be really good at business. Find the people that are good at design and learn from them.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very generous advice, and I've seen your logos, and I'm like amazed the type of work that you're doing. It's amazing. So, how can people reach out to you if they're looking to build their brand, if they're
Yeah,
looking to
any
get
questions?
logo done?
Yeah. So my website's zkcaptures.com. So like my initials and then captures. And then, or you can email me, and I can give you my email if you need it.
Okay, and yeah, actually I will leave it in the comment section below, so that way if somebody is trying to reach you out, they can reach you. And so thank you so much, Zainab, for joining us today. It
Yeah,
was a
thank you.
great pleasure to have you today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you all for
Thank you.
listening.
Thank you so much. So, building a brand does not stop even with the steps we have talked about earlier, but it has to remain consistent and it has to exist for any business from start till the end. So the purpose and the vision, the positioning of your brand identity and the expression, all of these things will create a stronger brand that will stand out from the crowd. So if you have any questions, leave us a comment below and we will be happy to help you. Thanks for watching and happy marketing, everyone. Bye.